My name is Eric Smedley. I'm part of the Gamma chapter of Phi Beta Mu. And with us today is composer and educator, conductor Robert Sheldon. Robert, welcome.
Thank you so much.
We'll first start off with where did you grow up and what's your background?
Well, I'm very young, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, South Philly, and but when I was 8 years old, moved to Florida. My parents were actually vaudeville musicians and performers,
Oh,
and they decided when I was about 8 years old that they needed to settle down a little bit, and we moved to west coast of Florida. They thought they would just make a living doing club dates and stuff, but the area wasn't really quite ready for that.
sure.
So they wound up buying a restaurant nightclub, and they did their shows there on weekends. And so I grew up in Bradenton, Florida. When I was old enough, well, I really wasn't old enough, but when I was in eighth grade, my parents decided that my extensive musical background by eighth grade enabled me to play in the house band. So
Oh,
I joined, I started playing professionally when I was in eighth grade. I think it was more or less just a way to not have to hire a babysitter for when I was home and they were out on Friday and Saturday nights. But I learned a lot, and it really helped shape a lot of my life.
it kept you out of trouble. That's right.
It did. Yeah.
So yeah, West Coast Florida. I taught for a bit. Cocoa Beach was my
Oh,
first
East
job,
Coast,
my
sure.
first high school, but of course, over there on the Space Coast,
Yeah,
as they
absolutely.
call it. So I'm sure we know a lot of the same folks there. All right. So you started playing then. When did you first start playing in school?
I started on violin in sixth grade, and then when I got into seventh grade, I started trombone which was then the junior high band. Sixth grade at that point was still elementary, but when I got into seventh grade, started playing trombone in the junior high band, and continued with that through school. But when I was playing professionally with my parents, I was actually playing woodwinds, sax, clarinet, and flute. And as school went on through high school, I kept playing trombone, but I always played sax in the jazz band, and I played flute in the orchestra and bassoon in the woodwind quintet, and different. Whenever they needed something, I was more than happy to. If I didn't already play it, I would learn to play it, and didn't realize at the time that doing that was a great training to be a band director because by the time I graduated from high school, I played pretty much everything fairly well. I mean, I could get around on almost every instrument fairly well and played in the all-state bands and all that stuff. So it was a great experience, and I continued to play professionally. After my mom and dad sold their nightclub, I got picked up and with a band and played up and down the west coast of Florida every weekend. That was my job in high school. My friends were all bagging groceries at Publix, and
Yeah.
I was out on Friday, Saturday night playing gigs every yacht club, country club. I mean, up and down the coast. And again, taught me a lot. And it kind of I didn't even know I was going to go into music. I just thought that was something I was doing for fun, but it made a huge impact, and I think it was very helpful to me.
So at what point then did you say, all right, I want to study this seriously. I want to take that next step.
Well, my senior year of high school, I was obviously absorbed in my school's music department, and realized during my senior
Which high
year that
school?
especially, yeah,
Sorry, which high
man,
school?
Manatee High in Branson, yeah. And I realized that as I was getting ready to graduate, that our high school jazz band, which was really quite good, was mostly seniors. And it dawned on me that, somebody needs to help train the younger kids to do this. So I asked my high school band director if I could start like a JV jazz band, and he let me do it. So I just started pulling music and put a group together, and I was teaching them after school, a couple days a week, and I was having such a blast with that. And I thought, maybe this is what I want to do, because up until then it was like, like, oh, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a lawyer, I want to be a veterinarian, I want to be an
Yeah.
accountant. You go through all the iterations, and finally it was like, really, I think I'm gonna go into music, and that's what I decided to do.
Wow. And so that led you, where did you go to undergrad then?
University of Miami. I wanted to go there because Well, I'd been to a jazz band camp there after my junior year in high school, summer after junior year, and studied with Jerry Coker. And I thought, this is amazing. I just can't believe how incredible this is. And Clifton Williams was teaching there, and Alfred Reed was teaching there, and Frederick Fennell was teaching there, and John Kenyon was teaching there. And I thought, this is where I want to be. I want to study with all these people. So I went down and auditioned in the spring of my senior year and somehow wound up with a full scholarship on oboe. And not sure how, because that wasn't, I didn't even bring an oboe to audition on. But I had a sax audition, I had a trombone audition, and Jerry Coker happened to have his office in the room, above the room where the woodwind audition was. My first audition was sax, second one was trombone, and he came down and told the oboe teacher, "Hey, this kid's a great oboe player." I doubled oboe, but so they wouldn't even let me take a sax audition. The oboe teacher brought me his oboe and said, "Play your sax audition on this." It's like, I was too naive to say no. So I just played, and they said, "You're an oboe major, full scholarship." And I said, "Well, I've got this trombone audition." "Nope, you're an oboe major." And I thought, well, I'm not going to do any better than a full scholarship, so I think I'll do that. And it was great. He taught me how to play oboe. I never thought I'd play oboe as well as I did then, and I don't play anymore, and I could never play that well any longer. But at the time, it was a great experience, and again, great for being a teacher because you get to a place with all of the students that you teach, and invariably, several times a week, somebody comes up and says, "My instrument doesn't work," and either you mess with it a little bit and it works, or you try it and go, "Nope, instrument's fine, it's you, and here's why," and you can help them. So it was a great experience. But I had a wonderful time at University of Miami. Clifton Williams was my composition teacher. Alfred Reed was my arranging teacher. Frederick Fennell was my band director, my conducting teacher. And Jerry Coker moved, unfortunately, before my freshman year, and he told me that summer he got in touch and he said, "I just want to let you know I'm not going to be here." He went to Tennessee, I believe, and I thought, well, I think I'm going to stick with what I'm doing, and I'm glad I did. And it was a great experience, and I had exempted all my academic subjects, so technically I was able to graduate in 3 years. But the music classes don't line up like that. And I really appreciated people like Connie Weldon, who was the tuba instructor there and one of the associate deans, who made it possible for me to substitute graduate classes and take them during the summer so that I could graduate in 3 years. So I'm very grateful to her and all of my teachers who were extraordinary and gave me wonderful experiences while I was there.
It's fantastic. With oboe too. I mean, when I taught middle school and high school, I would require my double reeds to be on private lessons because I didn't, I knew basics, right? But that was great. You have an in-house. I mean, for someone like you, gosh, any instrument you could just.
Well, I had some good private teachers through the years. I mean, on pretty much every instrument, I would seek them out and just say, I want you to teach me to get better at this. And they were all, not all of them were the most outstanding teachers, but even the ones that weren't, you still learn good things, and you also learn the things that you may not do when you're a teacher. So it's all valuable.
Yes, absolutely. It's all information. It all gets, you process it. Absolutely. So the composition, so Clifton Williams, was that right away? You knew, okay, I want to scratch this itch
Well,
here.
the, again, you're not, you don't know what you don't know till you find out you don't know it. And when I got down to Miami, I found out that Dr. Williams didn't teach undergraduates. But people have told me I'm sometimes I'm the type of person that will not be denied. I don't think they mean it as a compliment. But as it turned out, I found out that Dr. Williams was province governor for Phi Mu Alpha. And he had a horse ranch about 10 miles due west of the university, right on Miller Road. And once a month, the brothers of Phi Mu Alpha would go out and help out on his horse ranch. And I thought, okay, so if I pledge Phi Mu Alpha and I go out to, I mean, I'm picturing myself, I'm at his house. I didn't know where it was going to go from there, but I had figured that much out. And I must be rather devious. I hadn't really thought about that till now. But anyway, I pledged Phi Mu Alpha, wound up out at his house, and they told you, you're going to be into all kinds of things. Bring a change of clothes because you're going to be doing things in the stable, and so I did. But Clifton Williams was a big cowboy. I mean, he was like 6'5" and cowboy boots and a cowboy hat and quite a presence. And I'm in a stable shoveling stuff in a stable and allergic to hay. And he walked by and saw I was just, practically, eyes watering. I'm sneezing and I'm covered with hives. And he just said, "Son, what the hell's wrong with you?" And I said, "Nothing, sir," And he said, "Are you allergic to?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, then why are you doing this?" And I thought, "Here's my chance." And it all came out. And he just looked at me with these like, "You pathetic." And he said, "Go in the house, take a shower, and change your clothes," which was a little, kind of jolting. So I did. And I came out of the shower, changed clothes, and he's sitting there at the piano. "Come on, let's get a lesson in here."
Well,
So by the end of my first year there, my freshman year, I was already studying with him, and I studied with him through my second year. And of course, my third year was my last year there. And he got very, very sick that year. He died the following year, but he was very sick for a while. So I didn't get to work with him as much as I wanted to. As a matter of fact, he was unable to come to my senior recital because he was in such poor health. But I did get to see him again after graduation. I went back in the fall, and we had a really meaningful to me visit. And I'm glad I got to see him one more time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a great thing to be able to study with him, and before.
To me, I mean, he's a giant, he's a legend. And the thing I find interesting is, I mean, obviously, when he was really in his prime writing, uh, a lot of music was transcriptions from orchestra. And so he was writing original things and an American composer writing. I mean, he kind of started a whole bunch of other composers doing that. And his music was insanely popular at the time. It unfortunately doesn't get played as much as it should these days. But when you really got to know him, you found out that his taste in music was far more esoteric than the things he was writing.
Oh, really?
Because we had a little bit of I won't say a falling out. We just had some challenging times because it seemed to me he wanted me to write the weirdest things I could write. And finally, one day, I was very unhappy, and I just came in with this huge stack of music and just plopped it on his desk, like it was so tall he had to kind of look over the top of it. What is all of this, I said, "This is everything I've been writing that I've been afraid to show you." And he said, "Well, why would you be afraid to show me this? This looks great." And I said, "Because I don't think that's what you want me to write." And he said, "Well, I just want you to be you." And I said, "Yes, but I want to be you." So we finally came to an agreement about that, and the lessons after that got much uh, better for me anyway. But yeah, he was sort of a dad figure to me because my father passed away my first week of college. And when I went back to school the following week, I mean, I know how it would be in high school, and I know how it was being a high school band director for that and a college band director for 28 years. Kids that have a problem, generally, they would wind up going to their band director. But I didn't know Dr. Fennell well enough at the time, and I was a little intimidated. And so Clifton Williams became my surrogate dad. I just, you know, he was the one. And so getting an opportunity, having opportunity to work with him was really wonderful. And also, with Alfred Reed as well, who was another giant in our profession. And my experiences with him were completely different and equally wonderful. And I'm very grateful to everything that he did for me over the years.
Well, I can definitely see your, there to me, both of those composers just know how to score
Oh,
so
yeah.
for the band. And obviously that bleeds into your compositions too. It just fits.
I hope so. Thank you.
It just works. You know what I mean? It's, you know the instruments so well. That's hard for some composers, that idiomatic, I write this, but it doesn't really work on that instrument, and it's great.
I think for me, one of the things that has been helpful is, especially when you play a lot of like Broadway shows, for instance, I did a lot of that kind of stuff, not on Broadway, but just, playing those shows in other venues at University of Miami and other places. And you realize after a while, a lot of that music is really unfriendly and you have to find ways to play it. So you actually invent fingerings that are not on any, and then you get into the classroom and say, here, let me just show you, do it this way. And they go, that's not on my fingering chart. I know, but trust me, and you just sort of find there's things you have to do. You find a way to do it. So all of those experiences were great. And I think in terms of studying with Reed and Williams, of course it had an impact, but they would have had an impact even if I hadn't studied with them because I loved their music so much. And it was just a matter of trying to find my own voice, but using their guidance.
Yeah, absolutely. So when did you write your first band composition then?
When I was a junior in high school,
Okay.
and I had just been to my band director in my junior year of high school band director had suggested that I try out for All-State. I didn't even know what All-State was, but I was a junior in high school, tried out, made the All-State band, and had this incredible experience. I mean, we're playing, my high school band was good, but the All-State band was playing La Fiesta Mexicana and the second movement in the Nordic Symphony. And I mean, and I'm hearing these sounds around me that I've never been in a room with before. I mean, it was so inspiring. So I came home and that's what I'm going to do. I'm writing because I had already been writing for jazz band prior to that. I mean, I'd been writing arrangements for our high school marching band prior to that, but I'd never done this. And I made all the mistakes that so many young composers make. Primarily, if you've ever heard anything in your life that you really thought was cool, it has to be in this piece,
Yeah.
whether it belongs or not. Tempo blocks, got to have them. Horn rips, got to have them. I mean, whatever it is, because I guess it's almost like you think you're never going to do this again, so you got to include it. And nobody had ever told me really how to do any of this stuff. And I remember my high school band director said, "This piece is really, really hard." Of course it is. And he says, "I don't know that we will do much good reading this for you." And I was taking trombone lessons at the time from Don Nieberg up at University of South Florida. And of course, I would go up for my lessons once a week, drive up to Tampa an hour, and I would go and stay so I could watch the wind ensemble. Gail Sperry conducting the wind ensemble. They had a loft over the band room, kind of a viewing area. And I would go up there and just stand, sit and watch this happening beneath me here on the floor below. It was awe-inspiring, but not knowing anything, including probably any social skills, really. I just contacted Gail Sperry and said, when can you read this for me? And he actually responded, well, we can do it on this date. And but anyway, I took it up, and it was a total disaster. I mean, in every way, a total disaster. I was so humiliated. Um, it was like being on a hallucinogenic merry-go-round that was on fire. I mean, you heard everything was spinning around you in the wrong places and at the wrong times, and it didn't sound the way it was supposed to. And after that was over with, he said, come on up to my office afterwards. I thought, oh, this is going to be bad. But he said, there's some things here you really can work with. I said, Dr. Sperry, I can't tell you how appreciative I am of everything you've done for me, but I have learned my lesson. I will never write another piece of music again. And he said, no, no, no. He says, you're going to put this away and come back to it in a couple months. And he says, I really want you to have another look. And I did. And I contacted him several months later and I said, I've done everything you've requested or suggested I do. And if there's ever an opportunity just for a few minutes where you might be able to read this, I'd be, very appreciative. He gave me a date. I went up. They recorded this piece. I couldn't believe. I mean, I couldn't believe the difference, and how it all worked. Actually, it won the Volkwine Award a few years later, the ASPDA Award, in that format. I hadn't really changed it. So there was a lot of learning that went on during that time. And that was in junior year, senior year of high school. And then after that, my next composition was when I was in college, and I wrote a highly multi-metric piece, probably had 200 meter changes in it, because of course it did. And anyway, but I did that, and that's actually Dr. Williams had suggested I send that piece into the ASBDA Volquine contest. I actually sent both pieces in, and the other one won, and this one came in second. So I thought, this is it. I'm on my way. No. I learned that there aren't a whole lot of bands that can play stuff that difficult, and not a lot of publishers that want to take a risk on that. So I got the piece published as part of the prize, but that was really it. And so I went on teaching, and then of course you start teaching, and who has time to write?
Yeah.
You don't have time to eat. I mean, you don't have time to do anything. You're teaching. But after a few years, 4 years, I decided my first wife had cystic fibrosis. So when her illness got to a place where we really needed to do something, we went to the University of Florida that had a regional CF center at Chance Hospital. And here I find myself with really nothing to do. We're moved to Gainesville. So I went into the School of Music at the University of Florida and said, "Can I get a master's?" And they said, "Yeah, what do you want it in?" I said, "Well, I guess composition." They said, "For political reasons, it might be better for you to choose something else, whatever that meant." So I went with conducting, and Frank Wicks was my teacher. And I'd known Frank previously, so I just walked into his office and he said, "Hey, what are you doing here?" I said, "I'm your new graduate assistant." So it was his last year at University of Florida.
Still, it's
And no one knew that at the time, but he confided that in me about halfway through the year. He says, I'm out on interviews like almost every weekend, so you're going to have the wind ensemble to yourself every Friday. It's like, oh, that's too bad. But it was wonderful, and I had a lot of opportunity to do a lot of great things that he gave me the chance to do. And he was a great teacher. But I continued to study composition with anybody who'd sit down with me. Richard Bowles was my main contact there for that. Probably one of the smartest people I've ever met, and also had more common sense than anybody I've ever met, and musically and otherwise. And he was such a kind and wonderful man. And oh my gosh, I'm fortunate I got to work with him. And he still sits on my shoulder and whispers to me when I write every day. He's the voice. Like, do you really want to do, is there another way for you to achieve that without it being impossible? Think about, I just hear those. So he was the one that actually, he listened to a bunch of pieces I'd written, and he said, "I will take you on as a student. And your first assignment is to write a grade 3 piece for junior high school band." And I was a little insulted. I said, "Well, I don't understand." He said, "That's your assignment." And he says, I said, "That's your assignment." And he actually got me to say out loud, "But I can write things that nobody can play." He got me to say that. He says, "Yeah, I know. I've been listening to 45 minutes of that on these recordings." He says, "It's time for you to write something that people can play." He says, "I think you have something to say, and it's best if somebody can actually play those things, and that's what you're going to do." So I wrote a grade 3 piece, brought it in the next week. And, well, this is too hard. No, it's not. This is too difficult. And we did 8 weeks of this. And on the eighth week, he said, "Your piece is finished. Write out all the parts. We're going to record it with the wind ensemble next week," which mortified me because I didn't want all these wonderful musicians in the wind ensemble to think that's all you can write is this little grade 3 stuff. But what am I going to do? So we showed up the next week. Frank Wick said, I'll go ahead and conduct it. You go ahead and get in the recording booth." And they played it, and I thought, oh my gosh, that sounds so much better than I ever expected. And all these first chair players are coming up to me afterwards. "Can I get a copy of that? My band would love to play that." And Frank saying, "We got to get this piece published." So it was a big turning point for me. That piece was called Fall River Overture. And it wound up selling many thousands of copies, still sells hundreds a year. I can't imagine somebody doesn't have it in their library by now, but it still sells. After how many years is that? That would have been 1990, 1989. Yeah, so it's been a while, and it still sells, and I'm very grateful for that. But it was really Richard Bowles that got me to the point, and he was the one that introduced me to Chuck Barnhouse, and we got that published. And I'm forever eternally grateful to Richard Bowles. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today.
Yeah, I think it sounds like I mean, like many, you've had many great mentors, but you took those opportunities. I think, some
You
students they
you
work.
have
Yeah.
you have to not only find those opportunities, but you have to make those opportunities exist. It's not enough to just say, "I hope I'm lucky." You got to make your own luck. And especially in a field like the arts, I mean, there's so much competition for everything. You have to find hopefully a nice way to pave that way forward because nobody's going to do it for you.
Yeah, and I think, part of the audience, I think that will, watch these videos that I'm hoping anyway. I work with a lot of young composers, right? I here at IU, we have, lots of composers, and we have a program. I mentor a student composer, and then the next year I premiere their piece, and so there's a
Awesome. Yeah.
yeah. And it's, and it's all the things, right? You get okay, that's not going to work. That's going to be way too hard. Oh no, it'll be okay, and getting a composer to, a young composer to realize, okay, it doesn't have to be this complex, complicated, thing. And particularly, and you're right too. You brought up a point with young band music. There's a stigma, right? It's like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. But I mean, and I'm telling them, look, those students even more need great music to play.
It's very true, and it's interesting. A couple of things. I hope I can remember where I'm going with this. First of all, when I've taught composition at the collegiate level, and you probably have experienced this, so I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, but it used to really annoy me, and I've decided to choose to feel amused by this. Is the first lesson when the kids bring in whatever they've written, no expressive markings, no tempo marking, nothing like all the things that make the music feel like something, they've left that out. It's just the notes and the rhythms. And I think, you're not going to be around, hopefully, when this piece is constant, hopefully, if it gets played, you're not going to be at every rehearsal all over the world where this is done. Don't you think that the musicians need a little guidance here? So there is that. And of course, now the second point I think I'd forgotten, but but I always I like I said I've decided after a while to choose to be amused by it. Like when I see one of those pieces that does include all of that stuff, articulations and expressive markings and tempo markings and metronome markings and all this, like, wow, okay, I'm pretty impressed by that. But it's just amazing because that's a part of young composership is learning to do all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, So yeah, it sounds like you had some great opportunities. You took advantage of them right away. What happened after Florida? Did you start teaching full time or?
I was teaching after I graduated from University of Miami. I got a full-time high school band and orchestra teaching job in West Palm Beach,
Yeah,
and I did that for 4 years. My wife, we graduated from high school at the same time, but since I graduated from college a year early, she had one more year of school. She was at Florida Atlantic University, so I looked for a job in that area, taught in West Palm. We lived in Boca Raton. Then we moved up to Palm Beach Gardens, and she started doing some teaching. But when her illness got to the point where she couldn't do that anymore, that's when we moved to Gainesville. And we stayed there. After I got my degree, I stayed on and taught at the university for a few years, and including at the laboratory school where I had the high school band there, and it turned out to be an unbelievably good band, even though it was a grade 5 through 12 band that met only before school. They were they were quite a remarkable group of kids and musicians, unbelievable. And we had some really exceptional moments there. A lot of it I actually think is more due to the students than to me. My first clarinetist was Rodney Dorsey. And Rodney was my drum major, but I also had known Rodney previously because when I was still getting my master's the previous year at the university, they had asked me to take over conducting the Alachua County Youth Orchestra, which was a phenomenal youth orchestra. And he was my principal clarinet. So we had known each other. And then now I hear suddenly he's my drum major and first clarinetist. But you have students like Rodney, and how many students like Rodney are there ever? But it was a great model. Like, could you just play that phrase? Now, could the rest of you, mimic what he's that kind of thing? So, and I had many wonderful musicians there. So that was great. And so I stayed there until it was time for my wife was getting near the end of her life. So we decided to go back home to Bradenton, where her mom was. And so I took a job at Southeast High School in Bradenton. It was the only school available was Southeast. And of course, going to Manatee, they were a crosstown school, but we at Manatee High School we were the elite school, and Southeast. I mean, they were all like farmers and workers, and so and I can't teach there. And I had contacted the music supervisors. His name was Dale Jensen. He also was my flute teacher for a while when I was learning to play flute. And he was wiser than anybody I know ever gave him credit for. And he said to me, "Oh, look, I want to talk to you about a job for next year." So, and he knew how I felt about Southeast. He said, "Come over to my house on Saturday." He used to do woodworking. He would repair string instruments in his basement or his workroom. They don't have basements in Florida, but workroom. And he says, "So I'm telling you, you're going to be really dirty. So wear dirty clothes. Don't even take a shower because you're going to be really bad. So just come over because we're going to be with sawdust and all this stuff." And I followed directions and I showed up and, looked like I don't know what. Well, he knew that the principal from Southeast High School used to jog by his house on Saturday mornings. And he invited her in. She came in sweaty in her running shorts and tank top, and I looked like I don't know what. And I fell in love with her. I said, "I want to teach for you." And that was my job. So I taught at Southeast High School then for 7 years. My wife passed away after our sixth year there. So I stayed one more year. And it was during that year that Cliff Madsen contacted me and said, "We want you to apply for this job at Florida State." And Schellhammer was moving from that position into an administrative position. And I knew I wasn't going to get the job, so I thought, "Oh, this is going to be so much fun. I'm just going to have a great time." I wasn't concerned about a thing. They gave me stuff to conduct. It was just awesome. The bands were fantastic. I taught some classes and thought, I'll just go home. Nothing will ever come of it. And then they offered me the job. So um, I guess they weren't too smart, but I was happy to get the job. And I moved to Florida State and moved to Tallahassee, and realized real quickly it was not the right job for me because it was marching chiefs, and loved them. There's 450 of them. You're greatly outnumbered, but they were wonderful. But that wasn't really what I thought I would do with my life. And I realized there's just many, many easier ways to kill yourself. So I did it for 2 years, but during my first year, I actually met my second wife there, who was Cliff Madsen's graduate assistant. And so she is a wonderful musician. And actually, you would know her. She is now Deb Confredo. So she's president of NAFME now, or not whatever it's called now. Yeah, NAFME. And, brilliant musician, amazing music researcher. And she was finishing her doctorate at Florida State. So when she finished that, we decided to leave. And I thought I can't, I don't have time to write. And I realized how important it was for me. I felt I won't say I was depressed about it, but I was writing, but I was fighting to find any time to do it. And it wasn't the right job for me. So we left. She got a job here at Illinois State University, which is why I live in Normal now. And she taught here for 3 years until she got the similar music ed position out at U of I. I stayed in Normal. She just commuted back and forth. I was teaching out at East Peoria, so we were going different directions every day and coming back. And when our marriage finally ended a few years later, she moved back to Philadelphia, where she was from Philadelphia too. I didn't know her back in those days, of course, but she moved back there, moved to Cherry Hill, taught at Temple University, and I just decided to stay. And then I was offered this job as editor with Alfred Music, and realized I was going to need to retire from teaching, which I did, and took the job at Alfred, which meant I could live anywhere I wanted, and I just decided to stay. So I stayed here, and it's been an absolutely great decision. I love being here. I just couldn't be happier. It's all worked out really, really well. I have a wonderful husband who is extremely supportive and very understanding. And even though he's not a musician, he loves music. And whenever I'm conducting, especially abroad, I bring him with me. And everybody just loves him. So it's like, will you come back next year? It's like the only reason you're inviting me is because you want him to come. And I'm like, yeah, fine, we'll do it. But it's great. So we've had a wonderful we have a really good life, and I'm very happy with it. And I could not be more happy about the decision that I made all those years ago to go this direction. The teaching was the right thing to do. The editing was the right thing to do. The writing was the right thing to do. And now I'm conducting all the time, and I'm having such a wonderful time with it. So I know how fortunate I am, and I'm very grateful.
Yeah, that's great. I forgot about the Rodney Dorsey connection. Rodney, I know Rodney very well. He was here in Indiana.
Mhm. Well, I got to conduct the band from Indiana at ABA a few years ago because it was being hosted there out in
Heard that
Indianapolis.
too, actually.
Yeah, and Rodney just contacted me and said, "You're conducting my band," so which was a lovely thing to do. Of course, now he's down in Florida State again, so but we do get a chance to interact periodically, and I always appreciate that and enjoy seeing what he's up to because he's an amazing talent. So it's nice to have an affiliation with him, even though it's many years ago.
Yeah. So I mean, you've had all these great experiences, and when you sit down to write a piece, obviously it has to, and especially if it's for a school band, if we're thinking if we're, a young band kind of, either middle school, high school, whatever, all of that those years of teaching and conducting kind of come into it. Could you just kind of expand on that and how it kind of informs your writing or?
Well, most everything I write is on, I guess I should say everything I write is on commission at this point.
Yeah.
The pieces that are not technically commissioned are actually, if you want to call it, requested by my publisher. For instance, after writing method books, very often there's a series of performance music that accompanies those method books. So whether it's been at Alfred with the Sound Innovations method, and of course when I was an editor there, the company just said you are going to, it's like, yeah, I'll write those pieces. And now that I retired from was retired from my job. It was during the COVID thing where everybody was laid off. And fortunately, Chris Bernitas is now the editor there, and he's wonderful. And he's been very kind to keep me in the loop and stuff. So now I conduct all the recording sessions for Alfred and Bellman, which is a great experience to work with those wonderful musicians out in Washington, D.C. And I'm very grateful for him for asking me to do that. But he invites me to ask me, twist an arm, will you write this and this and this for that series? And when Brian Balmages, when I was working for him at FJH, it was the same thing with the Measure of Success book. I was writing things for that series. Now he's at Make Music, but so what I do now is I'm just constantly only writing on commission because that's all I have time for, and it's 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 commissions a year, so it's a lot of stuff to keep up with, but I love it. I mean, I'm having a good time, and I mean, I'm retired from just about everything else except for conducting, so I don't really have an excuse for saying no. Um, and so I've been doing that and really love it. But since it is on commission, that's where the information, where what you're talking about, what informs you to do this, because you're being told, our band plays grade 2, our band plays grade 5, our band play, and you have to take all of that with a little bit of you have to kind of smooth over some of that information because, for instance, every state has a different idea about what a grade 2 or grade 5 is. A grade 3 in Texas is grade 6 in North Carolina. You just don't know. So, and you don't necessarily, you're not going to get a recording of their band. And of course, in some cases, the band director will say, we just finished playing the whole first suite. It's like, well, I know you had it on the music stands, but I wonder how it really sounded. Like, did you really play it, or did you just play? But you can't ask those questions, so you have to just take it at face value. You want a grade 2.5? I'm writing you a 2.5 as best I can. And so knowing that's the information. Like, how am I going to get into this? And then the next thing is just trying to find an inspiration for it. And I've learned that's probably one of the more challenging things, especially after you've written several hundred pieces of music. How is this one going to differ from the last 300? Like, what are you going to do? So for me, I've learned that the most enjoyable way to get inspiration is travel. and through my travels, while I'm traveling, to do things that are outside my comfort zone, because that's what gets your mind going a different direction. So whether it's, sailing off the north coast of Libya or, wandering around with penguins in Antarctica or, whatever it may be, I want to get off the tourist area and go really see what people are doing. I want to, wander amongst real people and talk with them as best I can and interact and see things that I've never seen before. And how is that going to affect?
Yeah.
And it doesn't. I don't always come up with ideas on trips. I just got back from Europe Monday night. But one of the things I got to see over there while I was over there was the caves of Drac. I don't know if you're familiar with those,
Heard of them?
but it's in Palma de Mallorca. It's on the uh, the islands off the coast of Spain, and it's this enormous cavern. Like it has a giant lake in it underground, and of course Drac means dragon, and so it's the dragon caves, and I'm thinking there's a piece here somewhere, So I write that idea down, and at some point in time you'll see the caves of Drac come out with my name on it, but. But it's those kinds of things that really help keep my mind alive and interested in things that I didn't know about before.
Great to hear you say that because that's some advice I give to my students is like, look, you have to get out and live life. If all you do is just that tunnel vision, you won't. That's the inspiring stuff, right? The books, the where you're going and seeing this amazing cave with a lake, in the middle of it, and it's that's the important stuff. And I love listening to composers who have life experience, right? And it gets into their music. It's not just this kind of you know tunnel vision kind of thing. So I think for
Well,
anybody that
I
it's
think from an expressive standpoint, it's important, but also from the standpoint of just making the piece, this one you're writing, different from everything else in some way, different from everything else you've written. That's hard to do because, I mean, in some ways, of course, they don't use LP 33 and a third records anymore to do this with, of course. But, when back in the day, when I was in music history, they'd play Drop the Needle. And the whole point was how quick can you recognize the composer? Well, now I feel like my job is to make sure that no one will recognize the composer. Like, can I write this to sound like I don't even know myself, that we're not even friends? That whoever wrote this, we've never met. And I don't think I can do that all the time, but I think, the orchestration is kind of the composer's fingerprint.
sure.
And your fingerprints are all over that orchestration. And no matter what you write, there's going to be something there that's going to be a tell. So it doesn't matter what I do, it probably sounds like me on some level. But my goal is to try to make it not sound like me. Not just because I want it to not sound like me, because I just want it to have its own identity. And not be, oh, this is, version number three of that piece that that kind of thing.
Well,
It's
see,
hard.
you're probably hyper aware then of like certain gestures that you might use, like here and there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And as being aware of it means like, okay, so how can I change this up so I don't do that? I just almost did it. I started doing it. Now, but it could be what other combinations of instruments can I use that might achieve something a little different, but that will still be workable? Or sometimes it's just a matter of like, well, I've written this and it's in 3/4 time, and but you know what? If I make it in 7/8 time and I make it in minor key, and I mean, whatever it is to just throw you off your game a little bit, it's almost like sometimes when I go to cities that I love and that I'm familiar with, like Paris or Venice or Rome or Barcelona. One of the things I like to, or even New York City, one of the things I like to do is to try and go. I will get on a subway in Paris, deliberately not knowing which subway I'm getting on and not paying attention to where I'm getting off.
Sure.
And I would just get off somewhere like I have no idea where I am, and my goal is to find my way back home by walking. And you see things you never would have seen, and so I think in a way I kind of play that game when I'm writing. Like, let me see if I can deliberately paint myself into a corner here, and how am I going to find an elegant way to get out of that? And it's those things that are sometimes the most interesting parts of the piece later on when I listen to it 5 years later, like, I really like what I did there. And I only did it because I made myself uncomfortable.
So when you're writing for young people, that I mean that could be tough to do. I mean, there's only,
Oh,
but
yeah,
you challenge yourself to try different combinations and yeah.
you do. And even if it's going to be like just one trumpet part, one clarinet part, one whatever part, one baritone trombone bassoon part, like if you have limited, to me, I often will tell my students that are trying to do something like this, or have in the past. I'm not teaching right now, but it's a similar thing. Like so here's the Mona Lisa. You're going to recreate it, but instead of using the 128 Crayola box, you got the six Crayola box. But it still needs to be art. How are you going to make it art? How are you going to make it feel the way you want it to feel? You just don't have all the nuance. And I think that that's a big challenge. It's a matter of fact, I'm always kind of proud of myself if I have one of those pieces, and when I'm finished, I go, you know what? That doesn't sound like a grade one. It sure looks like one. And of course, as somebody who conducts as well as writes, that just because the notes are easy and the rhythms are easy doesn't necessarily make it easy to rehearse.
Yeah.
I take George Washington Bridge, for instance. Looks like a grade two until you put it in front of the band. But that's the thing, is knowing that in advance, then you can also say, yeah, the rhythms and the notes are key and the ranges are easy, but is it also easy for the kids to play? And that's, to me, that's the challenge. And still make it sound like it's not a grade one.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's fantastic. And do you think with I mean you said you do things with Alfred, they'll say, "Hey, we want, this type of piece." Is that one where they say where they have like maybe specific learning outcomes in kind
Yeah, with the ones that are associated with Sound Innovation series, need to be correlated to a specific level in the book. And there's
of
six levels in book one, four in book two. So the point is, you kind of want to. They might say we need something correlated with level three of book one. So I have to look and see what are the skill sets that they have. What are the ranges? What have they learned? What have they not learned? And sometimes it gets really annoyingly complicated. Like they haven't learned dotted rhythms yet.
yeah.
So how does that work? And they haven't learned. There's just certain things, and like, oh, I've got it all worked out, but they haven't learned that note, and it just, you have to kind of, it's a real challenge. I remember I hadn't ever thought about this till right this minute. Way back, in the Wayback Machine, when I was in junior high, and I was starting to write music. My very first piece, for whatever reason, was a jazz waltz called Something Else. You wouldn't think the first thing you'd ever write would be something
Yeah.
else. Maybe the second piece would be something, but my mind doesn't work the way most people's do. But then I wrote this piece, and I think because my dad owned this restaurant and nightclub, which had a liquor license, I remember there was always a thing about, you can't serve minors. And I thought, I'm going to write a jazz piece called Sorry, No Minors, and it's not going to have any minor chords in it. It was like my first challenge. Can you write a piece of music that doesn't have a minor chord? And the answer is no. However, if you use an augmented ninth chord, it kind of substitutes. So I thought, okay, and the other day, you know what? I really should get that. I should find that piece. That might turn out to be something that'd be really interesting to
Yeah.
visit. I haven't seen it in 50 some years, but I just thought about it today. But that was the first challenge. And then ever since then, I've been playing these games with myself. Like, can you write a piece that without using this, or only using this, or whatever? But it brings new ideas to the forefront.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of our composers here on faculty, David Zube, I don't know if you know David at all, but he has a similar take. Well, he likes parameters. I mean, he likes, all right, I want to be in this box and, and see what I can do with it. I think there's a famous Stravinsky quote too, like there's, about, something to that effect where, art can be, I think that's fantastic. And convincing students though to do, that they, hey, you don't have to have the whole palette of
You
everything.
know,
It
you
could
can
be,
tell
you can
them
make, yeah.
you can tell them not to touch the hot stove.
Yeah.
They need to touch it and
Oh
figure it
yeah,
out
yeah. Yes.
themselves. I mean, you can tell them, it's a lot easier to get four players together to play a quartet than what you've written, which requires an orchestra and chorus the size of a Carmina Burana performance. You're never going to get that together, but you can't convince them until they experience the angst of the inability of getting this monumental thing, but I don't ever want to discourage anybody from doing anything. I mean, if they're passionate about it, I say go for it, but I'm just going to offer them some commonsensical
Yeah.
notions so that, not that I'm going to come back later and say I told you so, but at least in their mind they're going, I see why he said that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, with me, with that mentorship I talked about this, these students will write for my band. It's all music majors, grad students, and they can play whatever, right? And
Right.
that's not the pro. It's do you want it played after this? Do you want it played again?
Right.
And that's like,
Yeah.
well, of course I want to play it again. Well, I mean, okay, well, you have to think about these things. So
And as well as I do, one of the hardest things in our profession is to get published.
yeah,
Once you're published, you stand a much better chance of getting published again. But even that's not guaranteed. Um, all publishers want a successful track record. And how are you supposed to get one without
yeah,
somebody taking a chance on you? So it's a very, very challenging thing. And yeah, I,
yeah.
I, I I understand that.
Comment on the world. I mean, since you live mainly in that published, you work for Alfred, et cetera, et cetera. Um, the self-publishing now, it seems to be. Can you talk a little bit about that and what your viewpoint is on the kind of current state of,
Sure.
yeah,
Well, I've had, when I was editing at Alfred for those 17, 18 years, I would have a lot of composers that would contact me following the hopefully pleasant rejection notification. And they'd say, I'm not having any luck getting this done. What do you think about self-publishing? And my take on it has always been, well, there's nothing wrong with doing that. The issue is, how do you let people know about your music? You know, the publishing company spends a huge amount of resources, effort, time, and money on advertising all this music and producing in a way and distributing in a way where you have a pretty good chance of, if the piece is any good, getting it sold. When you're on your own doing it, that's a different issue. And during the pandemic, I mean, I know we're all pretending it's over with. It's not, it's the COVID is still out there. I know, but it's nice to be able to still get back to our normal lives pretty much at this point. But during the time when it was really bad, I was actually writing a book with Scott Lang, and Scott said to me at the time, he says, "You really need to redo your website, and when you do, you need to make all your music available to sell on there." And I said, "Well, I don't own the music. The publishers do." And he says, "Well, you could be a distributor." Like, I guess I could. And then I could also sell my music directly. And I was talking like to Michael Markowski, and Michael does that. I was talking to, Tyler Grant. These are all friends who were doing this kind of stuff. I thought, I'm going to give that a try with the music that I have that's not published, especially older things that I don't even have yet. They're still in pencil and paper. It's before I had a computer. I'm going to bring those back. I'm going to notate them and make them available and all this. And I did that. And then I realized it didn't take too long to realize this is such a pain. I mean, every day it's fun to, oh, look what's got ordered last night, and now I've got to spend my time getting this music printed and shipping it and the taxes and on and on and on and on. And I thought, this is just not a creative, I don't want to do this.
yeah.
So what I do now, and what I actually recommend, because I think it's such a great service, is that JW Pepper My Score. I don't know if you're familiar with that,
Uh-uh.
the My Score program.
I think so. I've
It's
seen
I
some.
really highly recommend it. Yeah. So what it is, I had called Pepper and I said, I have things in my own Robert Sheldon Music, website. Is there a way that I can get Pepper to, review it and maybe include it in the catalog? And whoever I talked to there, their mind went a different direction, said, oh, you need to talk to Isaac Brooks. And they put me in touch with him. And Isaac said, well, I'm in charge of My Score. And I said, I don't know what that is. And he explained it. And I said, well, yeah, that sounds like it might work. So the way it works is no matter what you've written, and it doesn't matter whether it's a chamber piece or band or orchestra, choir, whatever it is, you can get an account with JW Pepper, My Score, and they've made it very easy to upload the score, all of the parts, recording, program notes, cover design, everything you want can go in there. And it lives at JW Pepper, and it shows up on their online catalog. Now, if somebody wants to buy it and they want to buy a digital version of it, now, in the world of publishing, the composer gets 10% of the purchase price. So if the piece sells for $50, you've made $5. You can almost afford a latte at Starbucks. But that's the way it is. And so you need to sell a lot of music and have a lot of music published before it's a viable thing. But at my score, it's a 50% royalty. So you sell it for $50, you make 25. And if the people say, well, I'd like to buy this, but I don't want to print it, I want it all printed and bound and shipped to me, they will do that at Pepper. You don't have to do any of it. And now you get a 25% royalty. I thought, oh my goodness, I'm doing this. So I changed my website. And of course, unfortunately, because of the service I was using, there was no way to do this on my website. The only way to make it work is to say I was out of stock. So almost every piece on my website says out of stock, but you can purchase this by clicking here, and it takes you right to the publisher. Or in the case of the pieces that are not yet published, it goes to MyScore. And now my publishers have kind of used the MyScore thing for me anyway as like a window shopping service. I'll get a call from one of my publishers. We saw this piece on MyScore. Can we have that next year? It's like, sure. And I called Isaac at Pepper. I said, I feel really bad about this. I said, I'm taking this off the Pepper, off the MyScore system but I don't want to do that if I'm doing this wrong. I feel bad. I'm putting this up there and it's basically a showroom.
Yeah.
And then people take the pieces. He says, this is great. There's no problem with that. And I said, well, then I'm going to keep doing it. So that's what I do. The pieces that I have that are not yet spoken for go up on my score. And then as soon as they've been picked up, if they're picked up, I just contact them and they pull it off. And then the publisher will put it on under their own
Yeah.
auspices.
Is that so?
It's a great service.
Yeah.
I tell my students about it.
Do publishers seek out pieces, or is it, or do composers like?
Not usually, no.
Yeah.
Not usually. Yeah. I don't know why that's happened to me. I'm grateful that it has, but I think it's been more of those things like, wonder what he's got out there that we can publish, and they've just happened to look
Yeah.
and find. Again, that's a lovely thing for somebody to do. But generally, with my publishers, they're all good friends. All of them are very good friends, very good friends. And so, I just say, do you want anything this year? And if you do, what do you want? And they pretty much now it's come up with pretty much a standard thing is that, I know what Alfred wants. As it turns out, like this next year, they want more because they want me to do a couple of some flex arrangements for some music. They're taking an orchestra piece. They're doing one in Bellwyn this year over in that side, which is nice. At Excelsior, Winger Jones, they'll say, we'd like this. And I sent, Randall Standridge, I do some editing for him, and he'll say, just send whatever you want. We'd love to have. So it's very nice. And I'm still working with Brian over at Make Music and send him stuff. And it's nice to have the outlets and have these really good friends who are out there doing this stuff. But honestly, for Randall, I was his editor for a while. For Chris Bernitas, I was his editor for a while. So it's been kind of fun having the roles reversed now.
Yeah.
And I love it, especially with the conducting the recording sessions. I didn't realize it all those years when I was the disembodied voice in the recording booth talking to the people on the stage, how much more fun it is to conduct them because I don't have to keep my eye on the clock.
Yeah.
I don't have to make a decision that it needs another take. That's all them. I just have the joy of it's the best.
So what you said you have a busy summer. What do you have coming up here?
Well, I've got some premieres coming up. I just had a premiere Monday in Carnegie Hall with the Cincinnati Wind Band. And unfortunately, I was in Barcelona, so I said, can't make it, but good luck. But it was great. They sold the hall out and standing ovation. They did a phenomenal job, and I'm really glad that they invited me to write that piece. So that just happened. And The next premiere is it's either coming up next month or the beginning of July. I can't remember, but it's you're probably familiar with Dan Fogelberg, the singer. Well, his father Lawrence. Did you know Lawrence was a band director?
Oh,
So Lawrence Fogelberg was an oboist and a band director here in Illinois,
okay.
very successful over in the Peoria area.
Okay.
And his son Dan, who's the famous singer, was his son. And so the song leader of the band, he's talking about his father, who was the leader of the band. Well, there's a Fogelberg Foundation in Peoria, and they curate and promote the music of John Fogelberg. So they contacted me and said they wanted to commission a piece. And I wrote, they had a very nice idea about what they wanted. And there's the Pekin Park Band this summer is going to premiere it over in the Peoria area. And they've asked me to come over and do the premiere with them. And but they gave me a very clear guideline of what they were looking for. And it's basically supposed to be a kind of a way to honor Lawrence Fogelberg as a great teacher, and by extension, all music teachers for
Okay.
what they do and what they give to their students. And so it was a joy to write the piece. So that's coming up this summer. Of course, the title came like that. It's called Living Legacy.
Yep.
I mean, it's right out of the song lyrics. So that's coming up, and then but I have some other premieres coming up, and basically a lot of writing to do. So I'm finishing up this week a commission for a group in Wisconsin, and then the next one is for a symphony orchestra in the Chicagoland area, and really looking forward to getting involved in that. And then there's some more band stuff, and so it's just writing and some more travel. Headed out to see my daughter, and well, actually, I'm going to see the grandbaby, but I'll say my daughter. But Harper's 15 months old, so we're looking forward to going out and visiting with Marie and Keegan and the baby. And then we're got some concerts coming up, and then we're off to Alaska for a couple of weeks and back in again in September, and it's just rinse and repeat, just more of the same. But it's even though it's all the same, it's all different. Every piece is different. Every group you work with is different. Every honor band's different, every commission's different, and I love that. I love the fact that it's familiar, but there's so much variety.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I mean, this is a joy. You've lived such an amazing life, and you continue to live an amazing life, you're an inspiring person. This has been
Well,
really good.
I thank you for that. That's a very nice thing to say. And at my age, I keep wondering, like, when is my best buy date? Is it approaching? And you don't know. And so as a result of that, my husband and I are thinking like anything we want to do,
Do it.
uh, if not now, when? If not us, who? Do it now because you don't know when you might not be able to. This time last year was well, about a year and a half ago. We were in Australia, in New Zealand actually, when suddenly I found I couldn't walk any longer and was in intense pain, and I wound up being helicoptered off of a ship in the fjords of New Zealand across the country to the East Coast, where I was in a hospital for a week. They stabilized me, and I got to come home just in time to have spinal surgery. And after 6 weeks of being unable to walk and getting used to being in a wheelchair, 3 hours after surgery, I'm up walking around without any pain. It was a big eye opener. Like, this can happen like that. So do what you want to do and make sure you can do it while you enjoy it. So that's basically the way we're living our lives right now. And it's not feeling any morbid in any sense. It's just like we feel good. We want to do this. We're going to do it while we can. And we may not want to after this time next year, but I hope we do because we actually have rebooked that New Zealand Australia cruise because we didn't get to go through the whole thing before, so we're going back next year. So hopefully health will remain.
Well, I'm glad you came out of that and you're in good health now. And yeah, oh, wow, that sounds scary. Well,
Well,
yeah,
what doesn't kill you make you stronger. Thank you, Kelly Clarkson. So
there you go.
yeah.
Well, thanks so much. I think we're gonna wrap things up here, and just really appreciate your time. And I
Oh,
think
absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, yeah, best wishes here, and yeah, we've got our summer music clinic happening here. So we got a concert tomorrow. I just finished getting them rehearsed all week and get them going tomorrow, and looking forward to getting some other projects done this summer. So yeah.
Well, I hope the summer is a really good one for you,
Yeah.
for everybody who's watching this. I hope that when you're involved in music, especially if you're a music teacher, summer really needs to be a recharge time. And so you don't want to, spend the whole time planning and, getting everything ready for the next fall. You have to do that to a degree. And part of it's just because we love to do it. But we all need to find times to recharge. And that's really important because if you do that, you get away from it, you come back, you got tons more energy and a much better attitude. At least that's the way I feel about it.
Yeah, that's those are great. That's great advice. All right, well, thank you so much. And best wishes of the rest of your day here. Hope you have a great welcome back. So you just got back from Europe, right?
Yeah, Monday. Hmm.
Wow. So still sort of recovering from that, I'm sure.
When I was your age, I used to be able to adapt to time zones a lot faster.
Sure.
But I got to tell you, now that I'm in my 70s, it doesn't adapt quite as quickly. So even though we've been home since Monday, I'm still waking up in the middle of the night, and I might fall asleep on you in an instant right here. So you just never know. But I'm getting back into it. It's been a few days. It's Friday now, so I think I'm okay.
Great. All right. Well, thanks again. And hopefully I'll run into you Midwest
I
and
hope so. Yeah. Thanks so much.
absolutely.